Welcome to another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. You're listening to a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State, featuring writer, poet, and musician Rick Pidcock. Now here's Rick.
It's a season of new beginnings as the calendar turns to 2026 and people begin making their New Year's resolutions. Some of us want to start doing new things we haven't done, or do them more consistently. Others want to stop doing things we've been doing in the past. And for some reason, the changing of the year makes us feel like it's a good moment to make these changes and hope for the best. Whatever our plans are for the new year, part of living with an incarnational mindset based in reality, as we've been exploring in recent episodes, is to recognize the fact that our present is shaped by our past, being present in our bodies today. Life in 2026 can't simply be experienced without realizing how life in 2025 lives within us, or how 2024 lives within us. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of the universe. In episode 86, I explored our current understanding of how the story goes all the way back to the beginning of the entire universe. We're not a universe of disconnected separate parts. We're part of an inseparable whole. Every one of us carries within our bodies the wonders and wounds of the entire history of the Earth, the Milky Way galaxy, and the universe. So any talk of justice or salvation that is based on an individualistic exile from one another makes no sense of reality. Blaming individual actions on an individual named Adam 6,000 years ago makes no sense of reality because Adam likely never existed, and because we definitely didn't descend from a single pair. If you have questions about my interpretation of Adam, I'll say it has to do more with the story of Israel and their exile, but that's for another episode. But that's part of the problem we're having today. Conservatives connect our present to a fake past. Then when black people connect our present to the past in regards to slavery and segregation, conservatives respond by denying that past, by justifying that past, or by acting like we're completely disconnected from that past. And that's not how this works. We can't define ultimate reality by disconnecting from reality. We explore ultimate reality by beginning with self-awareness about the reality embodied within us. Of course, when we begin exploring the reality of the universe, one of the questions that eventually comes up is the possibility of a multiverse. It's a theme that has appeared in many shows and movies over the past few years. In fact, Brett McCracken wrote a piece for the Gospel Coalition about the multiverse in movies. Of course, I really don't care what McCracken thinks about movies, so I'm not here to defend the multiverse. But the theology he explores in light of ideas about the multiverse is worth noting here. McCracken makes it clear through his critique of multiverse movies that he finds them boring, less entertaining, and less hopeful. So I'm going to assume that he thinks his view of reality is more entertaining and more hopeful. On one level, he argues against multiverse movies with appeals to biblical inerrancy about science. That's a fundamentalist concern that's not really even worth engaging here. But notice how he weaves hell into his argument. McCracken argues, quote, "When literally anything is possible, nothing is scary because no death is final and no peril is ultimate," unquote. In other words, McCracken prefers to believe in a scary universe where death is final and peril is ultimate, at least for some people. Because that's less boring, and it's more entertaining. That implies that McCracken and the Gospel Coalition believe in a disconnected universe where individual particulars can be separated out with no concern for the implications of the whole. Ironically, McCracken critiques the multiverse on that very accusation. He says, quote, "The multiverse aesthetic mirrors the social media aesthetic of disconnected, constantly churning bits of ephemeral amusements," unquote. He apparently has no awareness of how the Gospel Coalition's theology, where justice is the satisfaction of violent retribution against human bodies, makes things right by disconnection. In fact, their gospel is infinite disconnection because it's based on the disconnection of the infinite. But in any case, back to hell. McCracken says, quote, "Our actions have eternal consequences. If a loved one dies without knowing Christ, there are no alternate universes where we can reverse time and share the gospel with him before it's too late. If we squander our lives in rebellion against God and rejection of his grace, there's no reboot option when we come to our final breath," unquote. And that's his focus. He thinks he's appealing to taking eternal conscious torment seriously in the pursuit of hope. But what he's really doing is preferring a universe where our loved ones die and burn forever. Because his article focuses on which version of reality would be more entertaining and a more hopeful end, one must assume that McCracken and the Gospel Coalition prefer a universe where people burn forever because that reality is more entertaining and more hopeful. And that's why it's a total joke when the Gospel Coalition quotes Tim Keller saying that, quote, everything sad is going to come untrue, unquote. They don't believe that. Unless, of course, they think loved ones burning is entertaining and hopeful rather than sad. And that tracks with John Piper and Jonathan Edwards, who say they're going to celebrate that end because it glorifies God. But Keller's quote that everything sad is going to come untrue is at the heart of what a lot of people are feeling at the turn of the year. People look at their bodies, their finances, their spiritual lives, any number of things and feel sad, so they make New Year's resolutions to make those things untrue. Of course, it also doesn't make sense because things that are sad don't become untrue. They're embodied within us. Even if we're healing, there will be sensitivities and wounds from what came before because evolution, like incarnation, is embodied. And I think there's a solidarity in that. When we deepen our awareness of the wonders and wounds within our bodies, we'll be moved with compassion toward ourselves. And we'll desire to make things right through a restorative healing. And through that journey, we'll recognize and deepen our awareness of the wonders and wounds within our neighbors' bodies and within communities as a whole, which not only includes communities of humans, but humanity as a whole, the planet as a whole, and the universe as a whole. This is where a lot of my deconstruction came from. When I led worship, we'd sing about God making all things new, and we'd be really excited about it. But when I quietly reflected on our theology, I realized that God was only making a few things new. And then when I realized what God's violence toward the rest of creation would do to the humanity of the few, I realized that God actually wouldn't be making anything new because the few would have to exchange their humanity either for ignorance over what God was doing to those they loved, or out of violent delights over what God was doing to those they loved. In the book of Revelation, we witness an apocalyptic rendering of the violence of nations. Then in chapter 20, we see an apocalyptic depiction of judgment. It's one of the most favorite passages promoted by conservative evangelicals because it talks about the judgment of the lake of fire. But then from the judgment, we see a vision of a new heaven and a new earth. The one on the throne says, "I am making everything new." And what if everything actually means everything? Remember all the harm the nations cause throughout the book? Revelation 21:24-27 says, quote, "The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no more night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life." Notice the vision. Only those who have been purified can enter into the city. The gates are never shut, and the nations who operated in shameful and deceitful ways throughout the book are entering in. The implication, then, is that the judgment isn't violent retribution, but the judgment is the restoration that comes from holding everyone who is causing harm accountable until they repent and until the wounds are healed and reparations have been made. That's why the book ends with a vision of another tree. It says in Revelation 22, verse 2, "The leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations." So despite what Brett McCracken and the Theobros would have us to believe about the Bible, and despite Kirk Cameron thinking the only two options for Christians are eternal conscious torment or annihilationism, there's also another vision for universal restoration through a justice that heals. Of course, there's no way for us to know for sure that there is an afterlife that offers such an opportunity to us. These are conversations of faith, not certainty. But whether there is a literal future healing or not shouldn't affect what we do today. The fact is that loving yourself and loving your neighbor as yourself is a healing way to live. The fact is that as we deepen our awareness of the evolutionary wholeness within ourselves, our neighbors, and creation as a whole, we can name the hierarchies that cause exile and begin to heal. And if we actually took that healing seriously, then perhaps a future universal healing wouldn't be simply something that may or may not happen by faith, but could be the fruit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So whatever ways you're renewing your commitment to make things new in your own life this week, I hope all of us can do so through an incarnational mindset that deepens our awareness of how a real past is present in our current bodies, and how we can participate in healing and growing together. That's not only the mindset in which I live my own life, but it's the mindset from which I create this podcast. That's where I'm operating from internally when I'm working to dismantle the power dynamics of hierarchy that is causing harm and dehumanization and exile. I'm going to leave you with a song to open this year up with. Some of you may know that I create music under the artist name Provoke Wonder. I haven't been able to do too much on the music side lately, but I released an album in 2020 called Consider the Stars. The theme of the album was based on Psalm 8, where the psalmist considered human identity and relationship with God in light of their ancient understanding of the stars. And as I was going through my deconstruction, part of which was opening up to modern science, I was starting to wonder, what if we followed the psalmist's example by considering human identity and relationship with God in light of our understanding of the stars? Because as I shared in episode 86, we now know that when we look out at the stars, we're essentially looking at a mirror and seeing within ourselves an unfolding universal narrative of life, death, and resurrection into an intrinsically interconnected whole. So here's the song I wrote around 2018 to begin naming this unfolding of wholeness. It's called New Beginning.
Drifting away and exposed, lost and alone, longing for more. Then slowly being drawn in, a particle glimpse of others so far. Closer we come, tighter we bond, together we run, and we dance for the beauty of each other. We spin for what we can imagine, and deeper we feel, creating a new so far. Closer we come, tighter we bond, together we run, we dance for the beauty of each other. We spin for can't imagine, and deeper we feel, creating a new beginning. We dance for the beauty of each other. We spin for what we can't imagine, and deeper we feel, creating a new beginning. And this universe is beautiful. We're all a part of one cosmic soul. Our Creator now is making us whole. And this universe is beautiful. We're all a part of one cosmic soul.
that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be back with another episode on Monday. Happy New Year, everybody.
This has been another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. The episode you've just heard is part of a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State. Be sure to follow BNG daily at baptistnews.com and subscribe to get notifications about future episodes. Baptist News Global is a national nonprofit news service that is independent, free, and faithful. BNG is supported by readers and listeners like you. Learn more at baptistnews.com.
This episode was produced and edited by Mac Bowles of TKG Communications, LLC, Dallas, Texas.